9 weeks ago, my sister Jessica was killed in her home. Her husband has been charged with murder. My sister, like so many other women, especially Aboriginal women, got very little media attention. I'd been interviewed and photographed days after the event, but the stories were not run. Instead, pages and pages, front and back, in the West Australian was about football. Why isn't mainstream mass media shining a light on these unnecessary and preventable deaths?
Alison, we might come back to you. Okay. Hannah, start with you.
So one Australian woman is being killed every week, and we know for Aboriginal women this is much higher. Your sister was one of the victims. And why is football, and sports so much more a priority? There is so much suffering to the families, the children who are being left behind as orphans. This is the most serious human rights situation, I believe, in our country, and we have to do something about it. And the UN has told us clearly what we need to do. We've been reviewed by the Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women just last year. We do need national legislation on violence against women, and we absolutely need to increase our commitments to Indigenous women, who are about 18 times more likely as mothers to be murdered in this state, and who are failed routinely by the justice system and by the statutory departments that have those responsibilities. We as Aboriginal women have been raising our voices for decades, and it's time that we were properly heard.
So, can I just ask, thank you. Can I just ask, what do you think is actually going on? I mean, do you think it's elements of old racist attitudes that mean that people are disinterested? They see this sort of thing isn't news, won't sell newspapers or whatever. I mean, what is it that's going on, do you think, when you hear a story like that?
There is some issue here about whose lives matter, and that for Indigenous women and for non-Indigenous women, that our lives aren't being valued enough, or that we're in denial about what's actually happening in this country. But, I think all the evidence is there now. And it's time that we all take the blinkers off and demand accountability, starting from the top with our governments.
Lani, what do you think? It's your newspaper they're talking about, obviously.
Yeah. So, I'm so sorry about your sister, firstly. I think, it's horrible that your family has had to go through that, and I'm really sorry about that. I would say that, we do care about those issues. We did a campaign, Kill or Be Killed, where Annabelle Hennessy, wrote on the case of Jodie Goolwa, and that resulted in her being released from prison because she was subject to domestic violence. She was jailed for killing her partner, which was deemed to be in self-defence. So, through the vision of our editor who backed that campaign, we really shone a light on that. And I think that you are right, that there does need to be more of those stories in the media. As we have heard the statistics, there is one woman that dies every week from domestic violence, and personally, that's something that I really care about and have reported on a lot. So, I think that, like I said, it's horrible what is going on, and it's horrible what happened to your sister, and I think that I agree with you, we do need to report on those stories more, but I would draw attention to the example of some great reporting that we have in our newspaper.
That is absolutely true. Hannah would like to respond to that.
Yes, because I brought that case, Jodie's case. Jodie is my niece Kia's auntie, and I brought that case. I only found out about it late last year, and I brought it to many journalists, including Annabelle Hennessy, who finally raised it. But the fact is that Jodie had been in jail for over 4 years. She was an Aboriginal woman who'd experienced 2 decades of violence and abuse, and she had the most horrific and racist treatment by the criminal justice system that treated her as a perpetrator, that sentenced her to murder, a 12-year sentence with no parole, even though she had life-threatening health conditions. So it wasn't the benevolence necessarily of the West, but I'm ever grateful, as is Jodie, that the West campaign got on board, but we need to see it more often. And I agree with you, Alison, that there wasn't enough focus on what happened, really, and it isn't.
I will go back to Alison because she put her hand up. Do you want to just jump up, Alison? Do you want to respond to that?
Just that I think we need to start looking at community attitudes, and our country loves sport, but when we get more than 5 pages front and back about football rather than important matters like this, where I'm actually interviewed and photographed and stories don't get a mention, where vigils are held that attract hundreds of people and they still don't make the papers, I think something's wrong.